Guys, how many Jurassic Park fans do we have here? I definitely am one, though I will say Jurassic World Rebirth CGI T-Rex has traumatized the hell out of me. But what these films do best is allow us to wonder about the possibility of what would happen if you and I came face to face with dinosaurs. Would we survive? Which one of us would die first? It's a pretty fun situation, as long as you're not actually being chased down by dinosaurs, of course. Unfortunately, Anne Hathaway and her fictional family had to ask those questions in real time at the end of the summer release, The End of Oak Street. It's basically dinosaurs meet family drama and Anne Hathaway going from a husband that's been lost for 20 years, if you get that reference, to one that has lost his job and is drinking a lot. Oof, rough summer for her. But today we've got a very not spoiler-free video for you guys, breaking down the ending of the film and all the time travel questions that might still be on your mind. So let's go back to 1982 and get this journey started. The beginning recapped. Alright, so the film is set in the suburban neighborhood of Oak Street in 1982, and at the center of it all is Denise, played by Anne Hathaway, and her family. She and her husband Greg have two kids, Audrey and Brian, with their dog Starbuck, the seemingly perfect family. But clearly they're far from perfect. Denise and Greg's marriage is falling apart, and we understand from the draft of her new book that she has even considered leaving. So far, before the dinosaurs appeared, she was already feeling trapped, just in a slightly different way. But before you know it, weird things start happening in the neighborhood. One of their neighbors, Mrs. Huddleston, shows Denise a strange plant spontaneously growing in her backyard. And when Denise investigates it further in the librarian tells her she thinks it looks like Pluramia. But that's a species that's been extinct for ages. Then there's the strange flashing lights that start appearing at night. One morning, a whole heap of cow manure, or at least what they think is cow manure, appears in the yard of the dog-hating neighbor, Mel. But the next night is when it all happens. There's a storm brewing outside when the whole family sees the bright flash of light, this time with some loud noise until suddenly the power cuts out. Audrey even notices how the rain and storm stopped out of nowhere, and we hear screams from outside. But the family does the smart thing and they stay in and sleep the night. The next morning is when we realize what has actually happened. Denise and Greg wake up and go out to find Starbuck and check up on neighbors, and that's when they see that Mrs. Huddleston's backyard, where they found that single odd plant, has turned into a literal prehistoric forest. Finally, the two see what they're up against when they run into literal dinosaurs. Yep, multiple theropods. And when they go back home and try to leave the place, they realize that they're surrounded by prehistoric land. There's even a lake that is cropped up with crocodiles creeping out. They're quite literally cut off from the world and surrounded by dino habitat. What actually happened to Oak Street? So what the hell happened, right? Well, we don't get the exact science, but we find out a gist of what might have happened from a conversation the Platt family had. Oak Street had probably been moved to somewhere else. Remember those flashing lights? Those might have been portals that somehow transported them into the past, the same way that they brought the extinct plant and dino manure to the present. But Greg astutely points out that if the portals could bring things to the past and also get things to the present, then there was a solid chance that another accidental large flash of light could just save them and bring them back, which means all they would have to do is survive. Of course, there was no guarantee that such a large portal would ever happen again, or how long it would take before it happened, and how long their rations would even last. But nonetheless, they bolted themselves up in the house. Unfortunately, their dangers were just going to get bigger in size, because as it turns out, those smaller dinos, the theropods, were just the beginning. And that very night, we see winged dinosaurs, huge, snaky, eel-like creatures, dinosaurs that look like gigantic turtles, and of course, the cherry on top, dinosaur-killing dinosaurs, aka a T-Rex and Allosaurus. And they ran into all these creatures because Brian wanted to save Starbuck, who was no longer in his kennel. But hey, I would have done the same. Greg's sacrifice and the final escape. Okay, so Denise and Greg, who were clearly much closer than before and seem to have gotten over their differences, given the life-threatening nature of the scenario they find themselves in, went out together, gun and hammer in hand, to find their two kids, who were out looking for Starbuck. They, of course, ran into a bunch of dinosaurs and somehow managed to escape, even when a T-Rex rammed their car into a house and almost ate Denise. Interestingly, the two also found the source of the strange flashing light in one of the houses, this large luminescent mirror ball. But it vanishes in seconds before they can do anything about it. So clearly the whole wormhole portal theory was spot on. Eventually, the two find their children and the family reunites along with one of the younger neighbors, Jeanette. But not long after, they're attacked again by a dinosaur. And while Denise makes it out by the skin of her teeth, Greg wasn't as lucky. He pretty much sacrifices himself to save Denise. Now this is easily one of the most important moments in the film. Of course, it is shocking and low-key heartbreaking to watch his leg ripped off and him being eaten in front of his entire family. But the moment is also crucial because things were just getting better for Denise and Greg. They were finally starting to feel like a family again. But clearly, fate had something else planned. This pivotal moment also leads to one very important question, which we'll explain soon. But either way, they make it out of there and find the source of the flashing light yet again, which for some reason was in the house of the very same librarian who helped Denise figure out the prehistoric plant. Before their escape, there is this one scene though that I must mention where one of those massive never-ending reptilian creatures silently slithers into the Platt family house. And while it has an oddly cute face, the moment it opens its jaws, you'd probably piss your pants. That personally was one of my favorite scenes. But anyway, moving on. They make their way to the portal which was near the roof of their house, and while Jeanette jumps through, Brian misses the portal and falls straight to the ground. Here, he's almost taken away by the winged dinosaurs, but suddenly, out of nowhere, comes Starbuck, running to save Brian. Yay, reunion! A little unbelievable, but hey, we're past that point now. They once again make it up to the roof with a little help from the librarian who has to sacrifice herself to large-ass crocs. And this time, they successfully make it through the portal, along with Starbuck, and land in the present, which is 1982 for them, in some lady's swimming pool. The final twist and the mysterious phone call. So they jump into the portal and make it out, right? But turns out it's the very night the portaling had initially happened, July 11th, which means they had only 20 minutes to save themselves and the people they cared about. They were given a literal do-over, a second chance. This is when Denise gets to a phone booth and makes a phone call. Suddenly, a few minutes later, Greg arrives. The Greg from this current time. Not the Greg who had fought off dinosaurs and sacrificed his life, but a Greg who had no idea what a hellish nightmare his family had just been through. And the call is actually really important too. If you remember from earlier on, Greg had mentioned how he had lost his job and was struggling. Greg was somehow pulling along by delivering pizzas in his truck. So what did Denise do? She ordered a pizza. She knew Greg wouldn't be able to deny a delivery given the circumstances. In this way, she could ensure that he'd get saved from the disaster. Do things go back to normal? Oh, hell no. Far from it. You see, when the portal went off a second time in the new timeline, we finally get to see what happened on the other side of things. The area of the neighborhood of Flowervale that vanished was replaced by prehistoric land and dinosaurs in its place. It's an interesting juxtaposition if you think about it. Humans were trapped in the past in a foreign land being killed by dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs were trapped here in the present being captured and hunted by humans. We found out from the final scenes of the film where a news program is on TV that 2 years have passed since the incident, and scientists and the military had contained the area and captured or killed many of the transported dinosaurs. The news also reveals that Denise had saved many lives that night. She had called many of her neighbors, including Mrs. Huddleston, and asked them to leave and go to the hillside immediately. She even saved Mel and the librarian. They still don't understand the cause of the event though. Finally, we see Denise, who has written the book The End of Oak Street, The Incredible True Story. Life more or less went back to normal, but will it stay that way? The time paradox. But before we talk about predictions, let's dive into the time paradox. And it's going to get technical, guys. First of all, what kind of time travel rules are we actually looking at? Are we dealing with Back to the Future rules, where changing the past rewrites your present and only timeline and slowly erases you from a photograph? Or are we dealing with Avengers Endgame rules? If you remember that film or have recently rewatched it in preparation for Doomsday, you'll probably know Bruce Banner's explanation that changing the past doesn't change the future. Rather, you just branch reality into a separate timeline. The other messed up timeline still exists, you just don't exist in it. And that's exactly what happened in End of Oak Street. To put it simply, we've got Timeline A, which they left behind, which still exists where Flowervale is a dino circus, Greg is dead, and these 5, including the dog, made it out. Then there's Timeline B, where they fall into the swimming pool. What's interesting is that they don't undo what happened. The portal disaster still happens, but they change the events by saving a bunch of their neighbors and, of course, Greg. But one thing that the film doesn't consider that has been on my mind ever since is the fact that when all of them portal back to 1982, Their cells from that timeline still exist. They didn't just send their consciousness back into the present like Wolverine in Days of Future Past. They transported their whole bodies, which means for those 20 minutes we had 2 Denises, 2 pairs of kids, and 2 dogs. And this actually made me think of something much darker. What happened to the Denise, Audrey, Brian, and Starbuck of that timeline? They only saved Greg, so did they just quietly pull a Rick and Morty and replace their counterparts? Because if you think about it, this timeline's Denise, Audrey, and Brian would still get transported, only this time without Greg, who they'd think had disappeared, or maybe even abandoned them. If Greg wasn't there, would Denise have survived the dinosaur attack? Maybe things would have played out completely differently, but the film definitely glosses over that aspect, instead of showing us the happy family 2 years later. So is it really a happy ending? Especially since the Greg she's with now hasn't even experienced any of the tragedy that led them to grow close again. He's not even the Greg that saved her life. He's technically just a different person. But here's the deal, if you have watched the movie, it actually gives us evidence that duplicate people can coexist. In the final barbecue scene, there appear to be 2 Jeanettes. One is the Jeanette who survived the prehistoric nightmare, while the other is presumably the original 1982 Jeanette she'd managed to save. Predictions. Okay, we finally move on to the fun part, predicting things that'll probably never happen. But hey, let your imaginations run wild, guys. First off, let's talk about the mysterious portals that just came and disappeared. And 2 years later, not even one other cosmic accident after we had like 3 in the course of a week? Seems strange, doesn't it? But nonetheless, one thing is certain. Given the fact that there was not much explanation for how the portals started or why they stopped, there was still a solid chance that they would reappear. After all, there are so many unanswered questions about the portal, you know? Yeah, we theorized that it was some cosmic event, but could it not have been a natural phenomenon? Yes, very much. It could be a result of some fallout from a government experiment gone wrong, maybe even a particle accelerator on Earth or in another dimension. You've watched The Flash, you know what I'm talking about. The possibilities are endless. Hell, we don't even really know if the portals are restricted to any location. The next one might be in Antarctica for all we know. And you know what that means? The doors to a sequel are wide open, baby. I know the film isn't really about the why and the mechanics of what, but rather about the family dynamics. But given the fact that this Greg isn't the Greg we know, the family side of things could unravel too. Another prediction is regarding the prehistoric zone, which has now been secured off by the military and so-called scientists. If there's anything we've learned from the million Jurassic Park films, it's that humans are one greedy species, and they can never leave nature alone. So the next thing you know, we've got poachers and illegal experiments and scientists, and the military even trying to weaponize dinosaurs. Throw in some big, rich private corporations in the mix, and suddenly we've got a whole party in our hands. Even more so now that Denise's book has made the whole ordeal public. But of course, things will go wrong. In fact, it's not even just the dinosaurs. People might want to know more about the portals, might mess with wormholes, triggering another such drastic event to occur. And you know what'll happen then? Denise and her family will be brought right back in, given the fact that Denise is practically an expert on the topic. Apart from her kids and a dog that's smart but not so smart that he'll talk, Denise is one of the handful of living, breathing survivors who went through the whole ordeal and actually saw those portals up close and personal. So it could be the government or the military or private companies, but someone will definitely come knocking on her door. And of course, if she doesn't give them what they want, they always have a seemingly perfect family to threaten. Those are just some of my predictions. I'm sure you guys have many more, and we would love to hear them in the comments below, so go all out, guys. Look, if I'm going to be honest, the movie was far from perfect, and watching Denise and her kids make it up a hill in 2 minutes, holding a baseball bat and a gun that has probably been shot more times than it has bullets, definitely pulled me out of it all. But at the end of the day, the film was more about the family than the facts. A family that was falling apart, somehow holds itself together as the world crumbled. Plus, hey, if you've never seen dinosaurs doing the deed, well, this film definitely fulfills that desire. So it's got that going for itself. And if you just want to see some dinosaurs, which was my main motive too, then go ahead and watch the film and let us know your thoughts. Especially if you have any clues about the mirror portal that we missed. And as always, smash the like button if you enjoyed the breakdown, and subscribe to our channel for more such videos. We'll see you soon, goodbye, and stay safe out there, guys.